work to us is very, very important, and we could not do this without folks like you who are on this Zoom call and the help of Angela and her entire team. So just want to say thank you to all of you who make it possible. Part of our work is having an emergency domestic violence shelter, and so that's really where the Solarte connection comes in. We had to close our shelter because of COVID. The majority of the domestic violence shelters in South Carolina, we followed that same protocol and closed. Communal living, not a great idea in the middle of a pandemic. So what we were able to do is transition a lot of our services either to virtual services, or in the case of our shelter, we were able to secure funding that allowed us to put women and their children in motels in the area. And we have a transitional housing program. So we really boosted that transitional housing program to help more women get into apartments quicker. So we're able to do first month's rent or help with security deposits or their electric deposit, those kinds of things. And then with both of those programs, both the transitional housing and the women who would have been in our shelter, our staff has provided a significant amount of just, I mean, anything that those families need. It's a tough time when you're coming out of a domestic violence situation, but the COVID has certainly made that much more difficult. And what we have found is that the needs have changed. So much more basic needs in the last couple of months. And where we might have worked with a family on financial planning, we're probably more working with them on, let's make sure you have groceries. So significant amount of basic needs happening, and we're still doing that. We're still seeing that. And we're working on a plan to reopen our shelter, but we're being incredibly cautious, as you might imagine. So one of the concerns that we have had throughout the last few months with victims of child abuse and domestic violence is the fact that if you are at home, you are with your abuser for a significant longer time every day. And that can be bad in a number of ways. So if you were already in an abusive situation, that certainly heightens the abuse. If you were in a situation that perhaps was tenuous, maybe just not a great relationship, being together in very close quarters 24/7 could change that relationship and turn it into a very abusive relationship. So we've been very aware of that. And we noticed in the beginning that calls to our support line dropped drastically. And that worried us, because what that told us was that women were in situations where they probably weren't safe to make a phone call to us. And now as things have opened a little, we saw a national trend of support line calls skyrocketing. And we were no exception to that. So our staff have been very busy on the phone, making sure that women could get out of situations, making sure that they could find other housing, find food. I know in the last 2 weeks, we had a mom who just needed a stroller and a car seat. And we have a lovely family who was able to put some connections together and make that happen. So again, focusing on whatever need that family has. One of our other concerns during COVID has been that with school going virtual, that is another issue for reporting abuse and neglect. We know that teachers are one of the main reporters in our state and nationwide. And so we have been concerned that as we see child abuse reports and neglect reports go down, we know it doesn't mean that the abuse and neglect are decreasing. It just means that no one has eyes on those kids. So lots of concerns there. So the good news with all of this is that, and I know I'm biased because I work at Hopeful Horizons, but I am so amazed at what our staff have done, and they have managed to turn our in-person work into virtual work and really meet clients where they are. And we have seen clients embrace the video calls in a way that we weren't expecting. So we have some clients who have been much more comfortable and more open by video than they are in person. So I think long term, we're going to be able to offer a lot more options to families in terms of that therapy. And do they want to come in person? Do they want to meet outside somewhere? We've done some of that as well. Or do they want to remain with our video calls? And we're okay with all of it. We also started, and we had to cancel our support groups. So we have started an online support group. It's on Tuesday afternoons. It's more like a chat. So there is no video, there is no audio, which makes it a lot more comfortable. It's completely anonymous. So there's a difference between confidential and anonymous. This is completely anonymous. And I've gotten to participate in it a little bit to help facilitate the technology. And I'm amazed at what the therapists are able to do. And one of the really special parts of support group and an online support group is that victims and survivors are so open to helping other victims and survivors and sharing ideas and sharing thoughts. And that, to me, is the perfect segue into Angela. I met Angela and some of her team last spring. They came to Hilton Head. They did a great pop-up shop at Coligny and did an incredible job raising awareness about the issue of domestic violence and really focused on this community, and was wonderful. So I was thrilled when Angela reached out and said they wanted to do something again this summer. And she has a wonderful story to share. And her story, one of the things I love is that there is a personal story that fits very closely with her professional story and leads right into what she and her team are now doing for communities really across the Southeast. So with that, Angela, I will hand it over to you and let you share.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. And it's just a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to meet all of you remotely. I wish we could be in person today, but this makes it a great way to get the message out and continue our efforts as a brand and as a mission. So my story, the story of my domestic violence experience is 20 years ago. I was married to who I thought was my knight in shining armor, somebody that I met in my 20s, and the vulnerable age group for generally for women to fall into an abusive relationship is between 19 and 24. So I fell into that. The charm, you know, his background seemed to be everything that a woman or anybody would want. So I fell head over heels, and the abusive nature of him was subtle. In the beginning, it didn't happen. It never happens immediately, or else you generally would flee that. But subtly and over time, from controlling conversations, controlling phone calls, to controlling what I would wear, you know, where I could go if I was late coming home, you know, that sort of thing. So the dating relationship was quickly an engagement, which, you know, at that time in your life, you know, everybody's getting engaged, and it was exciting right out of college. So I fell for that and got engaged and got married within that year. And he moved us twice within 18 months. So we first moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, and I had a banking job at the time, and was moving up the ranks within the banking career. And once I started to get some notoriety, he put in for a transfer, so moved us again across the nation to Texas. And so I had to leave friends and family again to a new town. So pretty much anytime I started to have familiarity or relationships building, I was immediately isolated and controlled. He had a drinking problem. He was an alcoholic. I shouldn't say he had a drinking problem. He was an alcoholic. He also was hiding drugs from me, was spending money on drugs and alcohol that I didn't know about. I had a neighbor call me one day and asked if we'd been having big parties at our home. This is in Texas. Because she was noticing, we were living in a townhouse community in our 20s, that he was carrying handles of liquor to the dumpster in the afternoons. And I said, no, we're not having parties. And so if I brought anything up to him, you know, I was immediately threatened. It's none of your business what I'm doing. You know, I can do whatever I want. He was taking it to work, that sort of thing, and water bottles. So if any of you have been around alcoholism, it's a scary thing. But anyway, the rage continued at nights. He'd come home from work and drink and punch holes in walls, throw dinners away that I would make. You know, just all of the classic signs of an abuser. And for me, I grew up in a pretty level background. There wasn't a lot. There was social drinking, but not over the top. And you know, I had loving parents, and I had a family who loved me. So it was just bizarre to me that it was just shocking that I found myself in a situation that I just couldn't relate. And so I knew that it was wrong, but because of the charm in the beginning and the, you know, the rose-colored glasses I must have had back then. But I quickly realized that having moved 2 states further away from family and friends, being told that I'd never make it without him, it's kind of funny, but I'm running a company now. That sort of thing, you know, you'll never make it without me. Nobody's ever going to want you. You're fat, you're ugly, you know, every name in the book. So it just one thing led to the other. And one day I checked the mail, and there was drugs mailed to us from Florida to Texas. So I thought, well, this isn't good. I work in the banking industry, you know, I can't have drugs mailed to our home. So in confronting him, he went into a fit of rage and punched holes in every wall in the kitchen. You know, it just was very scary. Now, I was never physically abused. You know, I know women who've been through that, and I wasn't, but just the control and the verbal day in and day out. I had no self-esteem. I was a size 0 when I left. When I called my dad in the middle of the night in tears, my ex-husband had gone on a sales trip. I'm not really sure what he was doing, but had left for a couple of days. And I called my parents in the middle of the night, and my dad was on a flight out to Texas to get me. And this is before 9/11, and you could go to the gate. When he got to the gate, I was standing there, and he didn't recognize me because I was so thin. So he walked right past me. So, you know, these are the stories that many women have. I hear about them. I have people walk up to us at our events when we were having consumer events telling me their stories. I think the misnomer or the stereotype that women that look like me, you know, that come from good families may not ever go through that, or that, you know, have a good career on their hands. I mean, many women are subject to, and men too, so it's not just women. But, you know, I wanted to share a little bit about, you know, why Solarte and why I'm so passionate about Solarte playing a huge role in safe houses all over the country. And so we have about 7 right now. I mean, Hopeful Horizons was one of our first, which is so wonderful. And again, this is our first Zoom call. So thank you for being patient through, you know, the jitteriness of that and getting it all right. But we're just, you know, we're in every state that we sell our product, in every community. We give a portion of both the wholesale side of sales back. We also give a portion of our online sales. So anytime anybody orders online, right now it's 10% of retail goes back to the safe house chosen. But today, and as I told Erin, of course, you know, we're a generous company and we want to maintain that. So we do want to give back to Hopeful Horizons during this 48-hour period at 25%. And I'll go into more of that later. But, you know, it's just one of those things that, you know, even during this pandemic, when I can't get out and share the story and in front of people, and I can't go to events, you know, I wake up every day with it. It's, you know, what is our why? Why did I go through what I went through, and how can I use that to empower and instill, you know, that you may have been a victim at one point in your life, but don't stay a victim. You know, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And granted, I had a family to go home to, which is why I know that there's a need for people who don't have that. And it's, it doesn't go away. It's my heartbeat every day. You know, it's just, there's so many people in need that need to know that, you know, there might be somebody on this call right now watching this, that if you're going through a crisis, that there are people that will help you through it, but you do have to do the work. You know, there's work that goes into that, and it can be scary, and you're leaving something, even if it's bad, that was familiar for a while, and you may not have your self-esteem intact. I get that. There, you know, I didn't meet, and by the way, I'm happily remarried, which is wonderful, but it took me 10 years to get there. So I was single for 10 years of my life, so that I could heal and become whole again. So, you know, there's just so much that Solarte stands for. We inspire beauty from the inside out. We're an authentic brand. We attract people that, you know, yes, they want to take care of their skin, but they want to take care of other people too. And those two things, you know, inspiring beauty from the inside out, because you can have all the beauty in the world, but if you have a broken heart and you're not whole, and you're, you know, you need to heal. So, you know, that glow is better than any glow when you're whole. So, you know, I'm looking at the time, it's 2:20. With that, you know, I just want everyone to know that, you know, we are just like you all during this pandemic. We're trying to be creative and innovative. We're not a huge company, you know, we're not Chanel, but we know that we have a lot to offer, and we want to continue that generous giving every day, and that's what we're about. So I really don't, you know, have much more to say about that, but I'm glad that I am happily remarried. I have a 9-year-old little boy. But you know, that took a while for me to get there. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we want to help people get there for sure. So, and one more thing, Erin, I don't know, I know that you had mentioned a lot of what was going on. Is there anything that you wanted to share from a screen level? You don't have to, but I don't know if there were some documents that you wanted to share today.
I am unmuted, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I missed my document completely. And if Christopher, if you could allow me to do screen sharing, that would be great. And I did want to there are two things that you said, Angela, that just I want to repeat, because I think they're so important. One is about physical abuse versus financial abuse, emotional abuse. It's all abuse. Mm-hmm. And we have a client that I was talking with recently, and she said, well, you know, sometimes I feel like, you know, you have other clients who are physically abused and they need you much more, so I don't want to take up their time. We are here for everyone. Abuse is abuse. So the impact of financial abuse, the power and control that you experienced, Angela, that is can have lifelong repercussions. So I'm really glad that you said that. And then the other thing was just that abuse crosses socioeconomic lines. So it is not unique to anyone, and it's important that we remember that. So I just want to run through a few things for you, and I'm going to try not to do this backward. There we go. So just we recently released our 2019 impact report, And so I just wanted to share some of that with you so you can get a little bit of an idea of everything else that we do. So some information on our child abuse services. We are a nationally accredited children's advocacy center. And you'll see that last year we did 385 forensic interviews. So those are with very highly trained forensic interviewers who are also therapists. And it is a way for a child who has been abused or witnessed violence to tell their story one time. And the way we have it set up, law enforcement, Department of Social Services, other people who are important in that process can see the interview at the same time, and everyone gets all the same information at once. And the most important piece, the child tells their story one time, so we're not traumatizing them quite as much as when they have to repeat that. And as I mentioned, more than 1,300 victims came through our doors last year. And we also want to help the families of those victims and the caregivers. So you'll see here, that's another 788 people that we were able to work with. And then more than 1,000 crisis calls in a year. And it just goes on. So there are people and stories behind every single one of these numbers. And one of those stories is the volunteers who work with us. And our volunteers go through a really intense training to make sure that they are comfortable with all the areas that we offer for volunteering. And so if anyone is interested, we are actually doing a volunteer training the second week of July. And there is information on our website and on our Facebook page if anyone is interested in signing up. And just going back to the domestic violence piece of what we do, you'll see here that last year we provided a total of almost 4,000 nights of safety. So that's a significant amount. And we work really hard with women who are exiting the shelter to make sure that they have a safe place to go. And a lot of times that is our transitional housing program. So we're really proud to be able to have a woman and her family step into Hopeful Horizons and then stay with us for as long as they need us. And I don't know that a lot of folks know this, but we have a legal team, and our legal team focuses on domestic violence and sexual assault victims. So there's a significant amount that they can do for victims to help them navigate what can be a very complicated process. So we are always glad to help folks with that piece. And then we also have a prevention and outreach team. And you know, it's really interesting because we can do all the services in the world, but if we are not out there raising awareness and talking about prevention, then we're never going to stop these problems. And I'm really proud of the team that goes out into the community. They do a significant amount of work with middle and high school students, teaching them about violence, anger management. They're doing a lot with bystander intervention. So if you're a teenager and you see something happening with your friends, what do you say? Who do you go to? Who do you tell? How do you stand up for your friend? I think that's really difficult for teenagers. And there's no manual for how to do that as a teenager. So we have some great staff who are there to help with that. And do some good trainings. And then we also, you'll see from the photo here, we also do a Strengthening Families program. We actually just had our first virtual graduation for this program last week. And we had about 6 families who had participated. It's a 14-week session, and they learn a lot about positive discipline practices and communications. I think one of the things that I really love about this program is on any given evening, the families sit down and have a meal together. And then whatever the topic is for that night, the parents go and have a conversation about that topic while the kids are having age-appropriate conversations about that topic. And then they all come back together at the end of the evening and talk about it. And when you hear these families at the end of the program, It's pretty amazing to see what those skills can mean for pulling a family back together and preventing abuse and neglect in the long run. So I am so glad I was able to share some of this information. And Angela, I just want to say thank you to you again. Your story is really inspiring, and it's difficult to share a story like that. So thank you for opening your heart and sharing that.
Sure. And I just wanted to reiterate, we are, I was talking to somebody else the other day, we are a skincare brand, but we are all about our safe house mission, and to marry that message is so important to us. So we thank you for just playing a role in that every day, giving back in your own communities, being a voice. I wanted to tell another story. I remember after I'd gotten out of the marriage, I remember I was in a parking garage going home one night from the bank in Orlando, and I heard a woman screaming, yelling, and a man yelling at her. And, again, of course, you see these scary movies and you're like, don't approach, walk away. And I walked right towards that experience, and I said very calmly, do you need help? I'm here to help you. Who do we need to call? And, of course, thinking back to that, it may not have been the safest idea, but, it just compels me. If I see an injustice going on, I want to help. And we know that there are many lives that will be impacted through Hopeful Horizons. It takes everybody. So you have to talk about it. It shouldn't be a shameful conversation. There is a lot of shame associated with women and men who've been through domestic violence, but there's no shame in that. And I think the more we talk about our own stories, it allows other people the safety to do the same. Anyway, we do want to take some questions. I forgot to mention that in the very beginning. We have questions and answers. Let's see, it's 2:30, so I don't want to keep everybody on too much longer, but questions and answers. Christopher Williams is going to field that, and he'll be the one talking about the questions. And I didn't really go into the history of Solarte very much because I'm so mission focused, but Solarte products, just so you know, are paraben, phthalate, and silicone free, cruelty free. All of our products are made in France. They are shea butter based with essential oils, vitamins A, E, and F. I just kind of want to let you know what you're buying and what you're getting. So we have, of course, body lotions, which are great right out of the shower, the bath, to start your day. We have hand creams, which are 20% shea butter. So little hand cream for you.
Look what I have, Angela.
Oh, yes.
I brought my own favorites to show for you.
That's right. And so, all of the products work well together. But I use all of them every day. We have a shower cream, which is a cleanser, which is hydrating. And then we have the 70% shea butter, which is in verbena and lavender, essential oils. And 70%, I actually use this on my face at night. It's the only thing that I use on my face. So having grown up in the Florida sun most of my life, it's doing the job for me, which is great. So any purchases made over the next 48 hours, just use Hopeful Horizons in the checkout online. And the website is www.solartecollections.com. And you get a gift box, and you get a nice little insert card that talks about the story and what we do. So you can give it as a gift. You can use it yourself. They make great, just self-care packages right now. I think we all need that.
We sure do.
So.
And I just want to mention that I know I talked a little bit about our support line, but it is 24/7. And that number is 843-770-1070. And that's on our website. So if anyone needs us, we are here at all times for you.
That's great. And we do look forward to getting together again in person, if given the opportunity to come down in person to share the story. If, they're allowing events eventually, can certainly do that. And I think we are recording this today, and we'll have this up for you on your social media so more people can watch, throughout whenever they have time. So I know everybody has time constraints still, even though we're working from home, mostly. So, okay, well, I don't know. I think that there's a chat open for questions, and Christopher put that. So if we don't have any questions, we'll give everybody a few more minutes to see. But
Angela, I'm sure that you and I just said all the right things and we explained everything perfectly, right?
That's right. Well, and it's funny because sometimes I think, when I share my story, it is compelling. I mean, there's so much to it that, there were, at the end of the relationship, when I finally got out, he had bought an unregistered gun, and it's like, okay, how much do people want to know? I mean, it got worse and worse and worse. And so, those are the things that people need to know, is that, abuse happens over time, but it escalates. And I was fortunate to walk away with my life,
Yes.
And actually I will say this, which is interesting. I never thought I'd hear a pastor tell me to leave. But the pastor of the church in Waco, Texas, told me it was time to go. So,
Oh, good.
in a
Good.
strange way, having grown up, in the family that I did, I kept fighting for the marriage and kept thinking it would change. And so, I just didn't want to give up, I didn't want to give up. And, but there is a time where your life is threatened, and it's time to do that. So, and it's not giving up, it's getting free.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
Angela, I
okay.
have a question for you. Do you find that when you tell your story, is it therapeutic for you?
It definitely is. I mean, it's kind of, I think there's some things that I have blocked out,
Sure.
I just to save, my heart and my brain, from bitterness. But, I'll tell it to anybody who wants to listen. I just, it's one of those things. It's not, as we know, I mean, some people aren't as comfortable with all the details. So I try to gauge that with who I'm talking to. But I'm never going to stop sharing it. And, one of the things that my husband now, that I'm married to, on our first date, it just made me incredibly safe. I mean, he was sharing about his life and his story and what was going on, and he was really vulnerable. I mean, in a way that I'd never experienced. And I thought, well, if he can do that, then I need to start sharing my story, but it takes time. It definitely takes time.
Absolutely.
I do want to shout out to Christine Schmid is here. And Christine actually has known me for over 30 years. And she is our VP, and in Florida right now is her residence. But she's seen the transformation. She saw me when I got out of the marriage. And we can unmute her for a second, Christopher, if you don't mind. I'll let her maybe say a few things about that, if she's okay with that.
Yes. Yeah. So when Angela, started dating her now ex-husband, it was one of those things. We were in our early 20s and we were all excited about getting married. And then you kind of slowly saw pieces of her, losing her. And I'll never forget when it got to that point that I finally was able to reconnect with her once she got out. And it was like, oh my gosh, you're back. You are back. And I remember, again, we've known each other since we were 13. So it was, what a relief to know that you got out and look at you today. So proud of you.
Thank you. And we've got other people on the team here too, that have been attracted to, Christine has, of course, has known me for 30 years, but we've got Claire Pope here. And if she wants to just say 2 minutes of her, I'll let her do that. I know I do think we have a question, but go ahead, Claire. We can unmute Claire for a second, let her talk.
Hi everybody, it's lovely to be with you today. Yeah, I met Angela actually at an event, and I was just attracted to the brand, and then I got chatting to Angela and started to hear more about her story, and I just felt so compelled by it. And not only did I love the product, I love what the whole mission and what it stands for. I think I actually said, "Do you need some help?" I think those are my words, and she said yes. And I've been involved ever since, and obviously it's been difficult trying to engage with people during this time, but we're doing everything we can and reaching out to people and letting them know that we're still here, and as soon as we can we'll be back out engaging with all our fans, and going to all our events that unfortunately had to get cancelled, but we really enjoyed meeting people and getting to meet people face to face, because that's what we're about. And we always have our hashtag is Solarte Strong, and I feel like everyone on the team, we're all strong people, been through a lot. So yeah.
That's right. Thank you. All right. So Christopher, can you do the question?
Yeah, so we do have one question here. And I think it's directed for Angela, but obviously either of you guys can answer it. Do you have any advice for women in the 19 to 24 vulnerable range about building healthy relationships and determining that their situations are safe?
I can answer that. So my best advice is take your time in the relationship. You've got plenty of time, and I think we're always in our 20s. We just want to be like 30 or something, or 40 or 50. You know, it's like you're always rushing, but you have time, and really know who you are. I mean, I thought I knew, who I was as a person. And I did on a lot of levels. I knew what my heart wanted. But you really have to know yourself, what you love, what you dislike, and also when you're dating someone, pay attention to how they treat people around them. Pay attention to how they treat people waiting on them at a restaurant, or just everyone. Pay attention to that. I didn't pay enough attention to that, and there were times that my ex-husband, would yell at his mother, and I'd be in front of that, and I thought, well, that doesn't seem right, and I didn't check it. I didn't. It didn't happen all the time, but it would happen, and I thought, that's not good. So things like that. What else? Yeah, I mean, I would also, you don't want to. I'm not a game player. I don't play games, but I think you do need to test scenarios, and not, if you're having a bad day and you can't be who you are, or you can't express yourself without being shut down, that's not good. So mutual respect, your feelings, your boundaries. If you're being isolated, if you're being told you can't talk to friends, I was told to take, an adorable Gap outfit back to the Gap in my 20s. It was, just said that I looked like a streetwalker in it. And I thought, okay, this is the Gap. I mean, how do how does that happen? So, you just have to pay attention, and their signs are there. So,
so we have another one as well. This is for you and Christine. But can either of you speak about how to care for your friends who might be going through something like this?
Christine?
Well, I think it's number one, just be very supportive. You have to kind of be, you don't want to be too aggressive, because there were times where, I wanted to shake, but you can't do that. The main thing is just listen, offer support and advice. And yeah, that's probably the most important thing you can do when you have a friend that's going through this.
And I would also say, on that's true. I know it's frustrating. I've seen people that I know still at our age that are in relationships that aren't married, and they're dating because they're lonely. You know, and I get that. I mean, I do. I waited 10 years to meet my husband now between marriages. And so, you know, it's better to be better to be alone than lonely in a marriage. I was very lonely in the marriage. You don't want that. So, yeah. Anything else?
I just wanted to add to that. Sorry, Angela. I was just trying to unmute myself about. I have 2 daughters, and I just think, and a son. So it's important, you know, regardless of the gender, to talk to them about relationships from a very young age. And I think that's really important that we educate my daughter, you know, them as soon as possible. My daughter's 15, and she's obviously starting to date, and I think that's a really good time to start having those conversations about what is appropriate in a relationship, and what should feel comfortable and what shouldn't feel comfortable. So that's something else I just wanted to add to that we're trying to do that.
That's good. And I also just think, you know, the whole having a support system that's so solid that when you're friends with people that tell you sometimes what you don't want to hear, I mean, it was too late for me to hear anything because I was already down that rabbit hole of self-esteem loss. So my self-esteem was lost for years, and I couldn't look men in the eye at all. I'd be somewhere and I could not give them eye contact. So I think your support system, the people that love you, that encourage you, keep those people close. The ones that tell you what you don't want to hear sometimes, you know, they're saying it in love. So don't allow yourself to be in a situation where you're not listening anymore, because, you know, it doesn't end well. It ended well for me because I started to listen. So yeah, I've got one. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like that's it for the questions right now, and we're at 10 till 3. I do want to do a giveaway, and I think what we'll do, because we've got 17 people, if, you know, I think Christopher has kind of the list of the questions that were asked. So out of those, if Christopher will choose somebody who asked questions. Can't hear you.
It's a lot of pressure.
Oh, well, we're going to give away $150. So pressure's on. $150 worth of product.
That's great.
Okay. Let me go through it and see. I'm going to have to go with either Megan or Skylar.
All right. Well, Megan, I don't know who went. I think you said Megan first, so let's go with Megan today. We'll do this again. We'll definitely do it again. And for those that might have jumped on later, we do have our special. So if you order Solarte Collections on our website, we'll give 25% of that back to Hopeful Horizons, and we're leaving that open for 48 hours. And after that, it's 10% ongoing. So, but you have to choose Hopeful Horizons. So we've got a list in there. So make sure you choose for the shopping cart. And
we'll post a link on our social media.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That's all I have for today. And you can also email me direct if there's anything that anybody wants to ask direct. I love to give out my email. It's angela.jenkins@solartecollections.com, and always open for dialogue. And also, if you do order the product, we would love for you to write a review on the website, because that helps our search engines. And being a 3-year-old company, it's nice to have reviews. So we are thankful for you, and we look forward to doing this again. So Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.